My name is Alyssa Hart, and until 3 years ago, I believed in kindness. Kindness in relationships, in work, even when it wasn't returned. But that all changed on a Monday morning, the day my boss stole everything I had worked for. I walked into Nimbus Tech with a flash drive in hand, ready to present my project, my creation. And there he was. Ethan Wells. My mentor. My boss. The man who would unknowingly spark the fire that would turn me into someone unstoppable. He presented my work as his own, taking all the credit while I stood frozen, humiliated, unheard. That moment was the turning point. I whispered to myself, if they want to see what happens when a woman stops being nice, I'll show them. After Ethan vanished, I threw myself into my work. Career was the one thing that never ghosted me. I joined Nimbus Tech as a junior HR recruiter, the lowest position in the department. Sorting resumes, scheduling interviews, sending rejection emails, the work was tedious, but it taught me something important. In corporate America, people don't get destroyed by accidents. People destroy people. HR is the shield. HR is the protector. HR is where power quietly sits. I wanted that power. I wanted to control my destiny. So I worked harder than anyone. I arrived early, stayed late, took certification courses at night, and learned employment laws better than some lawyers. I handled conflicts with calm precision. And every time I felt tired, I remembered Ethan's silence, and my motivation returned like fire. 6 months later, my first promotion. A year later, another. 2 years later, HR manager. 3 years later, director of human resources. Me. The girl who once cried over a man who didn't care enough to send a final message. Now in an office with glass walls, overlooking the 17th floor, holding the authority to hire, fire, and protect. And that's when I knew, karma has a funny way of showing up. Little did I know, my past wasn't finished with me. It had been waiting, silently, in the shadows, for the perfect moment to walk back into my life. It was a Tuesday morning. The kind of cold Seattle morning where even your coffee turns lukewarm too quickly. I was hosting orientation for new hires. Clipboard in hand, attendance sheets ready, my HR smile firmly in place. Daniel Carter? Here. Sophia Lane? Present. Then I saw it, the name that made my heart skip a beat, Ethan Wells. My body froze. My mind screamed. Could it really be him? I blinked once, twice, hoping my eyes were lying. And then the door opened. There he was. Taller than I remembered, hair slightly messy, jawline sharper, and those same stormy blue eyes that once made my heart flutter. He looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes widened just a fraction, as if he suddenly realized who I was. Alyssa. Is that you? He asked. His voice. That same warmth. That same familiarity. My heart raced. But my face stayed calm. Professional. Unshakable. Welcome to Nimbus Tech, Mr. Wells. Please take a seat, I said. He looked startled but nodded, relief softening his features. Inside, something twisted in me. Not anger. Not pain. Power. The man who ghosted me 3 years ago was now standing in my office, under my authority. And I had all the control. Over the next few days, Ethan tried to act casual, walking past my office, dropping small smiles. I maintained my professional demeanor, acknowledging him politely but keeping my distance. I watched him carefully. Every flirty glance, every casual comment, every office interaction. I observed. Because power isn't loud. Power is quiet. Power makes the other person wonder what you are thinking. And I had perfected that power. Over the next few weeks, I did what I do best, I watched. Ethan. My ghoster. My past. He was talented, I'll admit. Quick with presentations, confident in meetings, charming enough to win clients over. But talent alone isn't enough. I noticed the little flaws he didn't realize I could see. Flirty glances toward female colleagues that crossed the line. Extended lunch breaks. Little arrogant remarks under his breath when he thought no one was listening. Not a terrible employee, just careless, unaware, and now, under my radar. I didn't want petty revenge. I didn't want to ruin his life. I wanted truth. I wanted accountability. So one afternoon, I sent him an email. Professional, neutral. Clear. Subject, HR check-in. Message, please stop by my office this Friday at 3 p.m. His response came almost immediately. Sure. Looking forward to catching up. Catching up? I thought. 3 years ago, he vanished without a word. Now he wanted to catch up? Not today. This time, the meeting would have purpose. This time, I was in control. In the meantime, I observed silently, recording small details in my mind. Each behavior. Each casual smile. Each gesture. I was learning who he really was. And that knowledge would be my advantage. Because revenge isn't about acting immediately. It's about waiting for the perfect moment. And my moment was coming. Friday arrived. The day I had summoned Ethan into my office. He walked in looking casual, maybe a little nervous, the same man who once vanished from my life without a word. I motioned to the chair across from my desk. Please, have a seat, Mr. Wells, I said. He hesitated. Paused. Saturday. Thanks, he muttered, voice slightly strained. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded. Calm. Composed. Professional, but alert. Powerful. I wanted to have a quick check-in, I began. Just a routine HR discussion. He nodded, unsure. He didn't know this wasn't routine. I studied him as he fidgeted. Little tells, the way he avoided direct eye contact, the tapping of his fingers on his knee, the subtle tension in his jaw. I spoke slowly, deliberately. Ethan, there's a complaint filed regarding your behavior toward a colleague. His head jerked up. What? No, that can't be. I kept my tone steady. I'm reviewing the details. I need to hear your side. He stammered. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just friendly. I nodded, letting my silence stretch. The silence is heavier than any accusation. It makes them fill the space with truth. You don't get to decide what makes someone uncomfortable, I said softly. They do. Your intent doesn't erase impact. He swallowed. Closed his eyes briefly. I messed up, he admitted quietly. And in that moment, I felt no joy, no vengeance. Just the satisfaction of balance. Accountability. I'm not firing you, I said after a pause. But you'll undergo mandatory harassment training. And you'll be monitored closely for 6 months. Any repeat, and your employment ends. Relief washed over his face, tinged with shame. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. As he left my office, I realized something. The woman who once cried silently over the man who ghosted her was now a leader. A protector. A woman who didn't need to destroy anyone to reclaim her power. And this was only the beginning of her story. After the meeting with HR, Ethan returned to his desk. He sat there quietly, staring at his computer screen, but seeing nothing. For the first time, he realized the consequences of his actions. 3 years of carelessness, arrogance, and avoidance had brought him here, under the watchful eye of the woman he had once ignored. I, Alyssa Hart, was no longer the girl who waited for apologies. I was a professional with authority. A protector of those who couldn't defend themselves. And Ethan was learning that the hard way. I observed him from across the office, pretending to focus on my work. The subtle tension in his shoulders, the nervous tapping of his fingers, the way he avoided eye contact, all signs that power had shifted. He didn't know it yet, but every step he took from now on would be measured, monitored, and accountable. And I was the one holding the scales. Meanwhile, I continued my work quietly. Every promotion, every decision, every email, I handled with precision, building an unshakable reputation. Power isn't given. Power is earned. And I had earned it, piece by piece, with sweat, tears, and unrelenting determination. Ethan had returned, thinking the past was forgotten. Thinking he could slip back into a routine as if nothing had happened. But he was wrong. Because the woman he left behind had transformed into a force that demanded respect, accountability, and integrity. And as I looked at him, pretending to type emails and review reports, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. No one would ever take advantage of me again. This wasn't about vengeance. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power, my voice, my life. And every day, Ethan would be reminded of that fact, subtly, quietly, professionally. The lesson had been set. The game had changed. And the woman he once ignored? She was untouchable now. Over the next few weeks, Ethan began to notice subtle changes. He watched me lead team meetings with confidence, every word precise, every decision calculated. The employees listened. They respected. They followed directions without hesitation. And he realized, for the first time, that I was no longer the woman who waited silently, who doubted herself, who let someone else define her worth. Ethan tried to adapt, to behave professionally, to show respect where it was due. He stayed on task, avoided unnecessary flattery, and even apologized to colleagues he had once treated carelessly. But respect earned is different than fear. And I was teaching him that every move he made now had consequences. Pause, 2 seconds. Narration continues. I watched him learn through observation, not confrontation. The lesson was clear: integrity, accountability, and professionalism mattered more than charm or past connections. No excuses. No shortcuts. Every action had weight. And in the quiet moments, when the office was empty, I reflected on how far I had come. 3 years ago, a ghoster had broken my heart. 3 years ago, I had felt powerless, invisible, and humiliated. Now, the power was mine. I had control over my career, my reputation, and my environment. And Ethan? He was just a reminder of what I had overcome, a mirror reflecting my own strength back at me. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about humiliation or cruelty. It was about transformation. About becoming someone who no one, not even your past ghosts, could manipulate or dismiss. And as Ethan watched, silently, the message became clear. Alyssa Hart wasn't someone to be underestimated. Not anymore. The balance had shifted. The game had changed. And I was winning. One evening, Ethan finally approached me directly. The office was empty, the hum of computers the only background sound. I want to thank you, Alyssa, he said, voice low. For what? I asked, calm but alert. For teaching me accountability. For showing me what real leadership looks like, he admitted. I studied him carefully. No arrogance this time. No flirty smile. Just a man realizing the consequences of his past actions and the strength of the woman he had underestimated. I hope you've learned your lesson, I said softly, letting the weight of my words linger. He nodded. I have, more than I ever thought I would. In that moment, I realized revenge isn't always about public humiliation. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is transformation. I had grown. I had become someone strong, unshakable, untouchable. And Ethan? He had been forced to recognize that strength. The power wasn't in hurting him. The power was in never being hurt again. Thank you for understanding, I said. Now, let's focus on moving forward, I added, professional, composed, authoritative. He smiled faintly, a genuine expression of respect this time. No charm. No manipulation. Just acknowledgement. And as he left the office that night, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Years of pain, humiliation, and frustration finally resolved, not through revenge, but through becoming the best version of myself. This was my story. A story of resilience, strength, and the quiet power of transformation. Alyssa Hart was no longer a girl waiting for someone else to decide her fate. She was a woman who controlled it. And anyone who doubted her would soon learn that some lessons are best taught by the silence of power. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom with confidence. Every executive, every employee, every newcomer knew my presence commanded attention. It wasn't arrogance. It was authority earned through years of dedication, skill, and resilience. I sat at the head of the table. The project updates, deadlines, and HR policies awaited my guidance. And Ethan? He was there too. Sitting quietly, focused, respectful, aware of the woman who now led the room. As the meeting progressed, I noticed subtle glances in my direction. Recognition. Respect. Perhaps even awe. People understood that leadership isn't about dominance, or manipulation, or charm. It's about presence. Vision. Integrity. By noon, emails were sent, policies updated, projects approved. Every action was deliberate. Every decision reinforced my authority. I wasn't seeking revenge anymore. I didn't need to humiliate or shame anyone. The lesson had been delivered. Alyssa Hart was no longer someone to be underestimated. Ethan approached me later, quietly, offering assistance on a project. I accepted, professional and cordial. No bitterness. No ego. Just mutual respect, earned the hard way. And as I looked out over the city skyline from my office, I realized something profound. Power is silent. Strength is quiet. Revenge isn't about destroying others, it's about becoming unbreakable. And that is exactly what I had done. Months passed. Ethan adjusted to the new reality, professional, respectful, accountable. And I had fully embraced the woman I had become. No longer defined by betrayal, humiliation, or the mistakes of others. I was the architect of my own destiny. I stood on the rooftop terrace one evening, the city lights reflecting off the water below. The cool breeze brushed against my face. And I smiled. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But out of understanding. I had learned that true power doesn't lie in tearing others down. It lies in lifting yourself up. In reclaiming your voice. In becoming unshakable. The people who once underestimated me now looked to me for guidance, inspiration, and leadership. And Ethan? He had changed too, silently acknowledging the woman he had once overlooked. No grand apologies. No dramatic confrontations. Just respect earned through transformation. I had my career. My dignity. My strength. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. The lessons of the past remained with me, engraved in my mind. But they no longer controlled me. I controlled them. Alyssa Hart was no longer the girl who waited for someone else to decide her fate. She was the woman who shaped it. The office, the city, the world, they didn't define me. I defined myself. And as the night settled over Seattle, I whispered quietly to the wind. This is my story. My journey. My power. And anyone who doubted me will see that some lessons are best taught silently, with unwavering strength. The story had ended. But the woman had only just begun.